Thank you. I'm calling the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. My name is Melissa White. I work for the New Mexico Environment Department, and I will be the facilitator today. I'd like to welcome the members of the advisory committee in person and online. I would especially like to welcome Representative Hockman Vigil, who's here with us today. The New Mexico Environment Department staff who are here, and the members of the public who are joining us online and in person. Welcome to everyone, and thank you. Also, thank you to the technical folks who are running everything for us today. We appreciate you all helping us prepare and also being here in person and taking the time. So this is just a quick welcome, and then later there'll be a better welcome from Michelle Miano. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping on the door, this door and that door on your way out. You can find the Wi-Fi information as well as the bathroom code. The bathroom is near the entrance to the building, past the, I think the men's is on one side of the security guard and the women's is on the other side of the security guard desk. This meeting will end at 12 noon, so part of my job is to keep things moving along and make sure we have time to cover everything. So if I interrupt you, please pardon me for doing that role. We will have roll call in just a minute from Pamela Jones of NMED. She'll take care of that. If you are a member of the public here in person, please make sure you sign in at the entrance. There's a sign-in sheet if you haven't done so already. If you are online, whether an advisory committee member or a member of the public, please make sure that your name appears on the screen for us so that we can identify you. As the presentations go along and discussions, you may wish to ask a question. If you would like to do so, please raise your hand. You can do it with your physical hand, or on WebEx there's a raise hand function. So please raise your hand and wait. I will call on you. I'll also keep track of any raised hands to make sure that you're not overlooked. However, during presentations, several people will be coming and sitting here and doing presentations. The presenter will call on you directly, but I'll still track and make sure you get attention. This meeting is being recorded. Audio-visual recording is being made. The chat function online is only for technical issues, and by that I mean IT. For example, if you're having trouble with the audio or something's going wrong with WebEx, you can communicate with NMED staff using the chat function, and I believe Pamela Jones is the person who will respond to you. It looks like there's a message already, Pamela, about that. The chat should not be used for any other comments, and I think other comments we may not be able to respond to. Members of the public online and in person will be able to hear this proceeding. Advisory committee members who are online also have the ability to unmute yourselves and remute yourselves. So again, when you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. When I call on you or the presenter calls on you, unmute yourself and go ahead and speak. And then please mute yourself later. I also want to say there will be a question and answer period after the presentations a little bit later in the morning. And yeah, that should be an interesting time to hear from everybody. For people online, we suggest that you keep your video off until you would like to speak. Apparently this helps with the bandwidth and WebEx. I'd also like to cover a few ground rules for positive participation. Probably the first one is let's respect each other. We may have a lot of diversity of opinions, but we want to hear everyone's opinion and listen to each other, even if we disagree with each other's opinion. We ask you to be lean and economical with your speech so that we can hear from as many people as possible, remembering that the purpose of the advisory committee is to give technical input to the NMED rulemaking team, particularly on the mechanics of the market and the creation of credits. These are our main topics. So we ask you to stay on that subject. And also, if someone has stated an opinion or information that you agree with, please don't repeat it, but if you'd like to, you can indicate your agreement so that we know that. Let's see. As I mentioned, this meeting is being recorded audio-visually. We will also be taking minutes, but they will be very streamlined minutes without all the nuance of the discussion. After this committee is finished with its meetings, a technical report will be issued. That will include the agendas, the presentations, the PowerPoints that you'll hear and see today, as well as these streamlined minutes. Advisory committee members and members of the public have opportunities to give more input than you'll be able to verbally give today. And I believe Claudia Borchert, who's here with us, her presentation is going to cover in detail those 4 other ways to give input. Okay, and documents. So the agenda for this meeting and the next 2 meetings, as well as they are already posted on the Clean Fuel Standards website. And Claudia, as you offered, could you post that link in the chat? And then the PowerPoints of the presentations will be posted later. So now I'd like to ask Pamela Jones of NMED to conduct the roll call, ascertain if we have quorum, and then conduct the vote to approve the agenda.
Yes, good morning. I will take roll call, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. Please correct me so I have it correctly in the future. I'm going to start at the top of the list. Alaric Babej, are you present?
Yes, Babe, present.
Babe, thank you. Amy Brown? And if you're online...
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Yes, I am present.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Anthony
Thank
Willingham?
I'm here.
Thank you.
I don't want to call right now. I need you to.
Brian Bartlett? Is Brian Bartlett?
Present.
Thank you. Carrie Lynch?
Present. And
Thank you.
Kara.
Corey Ann Wind? I see your name online. Ms. Wind, can you unmute yourself and indicate you're present? All right, I'll circle back. Daniel Klein?
Present, online.
Thank you. Dalva Molenberg?
Present.
Thank you. Eduardo Barrientos?
Present.
Gotcha. Ethan Epstein?
Present.
Gotcha. Evan Rosenberg?
Present.
Thank you. Gabriel Pasiniak?
Present.
Graham Noyes?
Present.
Jane Sadler?
Present.
Jed Smith?
Present.
Jessica Gregg?
Present.
Joseph Serena?
Present.
Carrie Butenhoff?
Yep, I'm here.
Carl Feldman? Mr. Feldman, are you present? Oh, right there in front of me. Okay. I should look up and look around. Lloyd Funk?
Present.
Luis Reyes?
Present.
Matthew Wire?
Present.
Did I pronounce your name right, Mr. Wire?
You got it. Thank you.
All right. Michael Teague?
I'm here.
Thank you. Robert Hagevort?
Present.
Thank you. Sam Wade?
I'm here.
Teresa Sosa?
Present.
Tiffany Wallace Pollock?
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Tim Hawks? Mr. Hawks, are you present? All right, we'll circle back around. Todd Trauman?
I'm present.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Tom Dahlmeyer.
Present.
Travis Madsen.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Viswanath Krishnamurthy.
Good morning, I'm here.
How'd I do on your name?
Very well.
Okay, thank you.
Just call me Wish.
Okay, okay, Wish. Corey Ann Wind. Gotcha. Okay, I hear you this time. Thank you. And who was the other one? Mr. Hawks, Tim Hawks? I'm going to go down the participant list here. I don't see you online, and if you're not here in the room, I'm going to count you absent. Miss Moderator, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Can you conduct the vote that I mentioned before
Sure.
to approve the agenda?
Certainly. Members of the committee, you've had an opportunity, I hope, to look at the agenda that was posted and possibly sent to you. I don't remember if it got mailed out. Do we need a motion to approve that agenda and then a second?
Yes.
I second.
Second.
Okay, tell me who moved? Mr. Carl? Okay, very good. No, that's fine. And then who was the second? If you'd say your name, please.
Travis Madsen.
Thank you. And you seconded. Okay, let's ask council. Mr. Vigil, can we do this by acclamation, or should it be name by name to approve the agenda? Okay. Do you have a preference? Let's, rather than go through the list again, all in favor of approval of the agenda as it's presented, indicate by saying aye or raise your hand. Raise your hand online as well so we can see. We'll do it, okay?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Lots of hands. Thank you. Is anyone opposed to the agenda as written? Ms. Moderator, the motion passes.
Thank you. And next will be Michelle Miano, the Director of the Environmental Protection Division. She'll provide a welcome to everyone in the committee, and if you can shorten your time, that would help us catch up. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Michelle Miano, and with me this morning is Deputy Secretary Linneman. So I'm going to turn it over to her for the initial welcome, and then she'll turn it back over to me, and I will give some more insight on today's meeting and the next couple of meetings.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here, members of the advisory committee, members of the public who've joined us this morning. I know many of you, for many of you, this has been a long journey. Certainly it has been for the New Mexico Environment Department. As many of you likely know, we introduced this legislation starting in 2019, and we're so delighted to be here at this point where the hard work really starts to think about how do we use this clean fuels program not only to decarbonize our transportation sector, but really to grow the economy, the sustainable economy here in New Mexico. So we're delighted to have members from industry, members from the utilities, members from advocacy organizations joining us to think about what does a New Mexico version of the clean fuels program look like? How do we right-size this for the work that we're all trying to do here? So I know you're taking time out of your very busy schedules. I know for many of you who perhaps applied for the advisory committee and were not selected because we were really overwhelmed by the amount of interest, know that your input is welcome. We really look forward to and appreciate as much time as you can give to us to help us build a really strong set of rules to take to the EIB in the coming months. So I think many of you know how to find me. If you have thoughts about the rules as they come out. If there are other opportunities that you'd like to take to chat with NMED, know that this is not our only avenue to take public comment and to take advice on how we build a really strong set of rules. So I am hoping to attend as many of these as I possibly can. As you all likely know, there's a lot of competing priorities in the state right now, but I'm excited to learn along with all of you and members of the public about this really exciting program. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle, who is the lead for NMED. Is that right? That sounds right.
Thank you so much, Deputy Secretary, and thank you for that introduction. I want to begin by using a little bit of the history that Deputy Secretary mentioned. We have been here for quite a few years now, and with House Bill 41, we now have a law that directs us to create a program that achieves real carbon reductions. And I am so excited that we have the authorization now to move forward with developing the mechanics of that program. As everybody here is very much well aware, we have an advisory committee that was part of that law, and that brings us all here today to discuss what everybody's experience and thoughts are going into this rulemaking process. One of the reasons why we put together the advisory committee as part of House Bill 41 is we know this is a very technical rulemaking. We know that we are creating a market. Although this market already exists in the states of California, Washington, and Oregon, we want to make sure that we are creating a market that aligns with what works for New Mexico. And so that is really the genesis of why we're here, and we're going to be having a lot of discussion on how to get to where the law directs us to go, which is 20% below the carbon intensity levels of 2018. And then we have another step down in 2030. That first benchmark being by 2030, the second benchmark being by 2040. We know it's aggressive, but we also realize that there's a lot of economic opportunities that come with this program, and we are in a climate crisis that needs addressing as soon as we can. So those are some of the principles and directives that bring us here. I want to touch on the purpose and the expectations that the New Mexico Environment Department has as far as your participation on the advisory committee. I want to be very clear that nobody on the advisory committee is going to have any more or less influence on how New Mexico Environment Department develops its rulemaking. Different than the public, the comments and what we go through with our usual rulemaking process, where we have public outreach, public hearings, meet individually, have handouts, spreadsheet, the whole thing. So I just want to make very clear that although we have convened this advisory committee for purposes of informing what those rules are going to look like, we will be having public comment on the presentations and observations and sharing that's part of this advisory committee process that we will also be taking into consideration as we develop our rules. And of course, we'll have all of the public outreach that comes with a formal rulemaking process. So I just wanted to kind of set the tone there. I also want to make sure that we are thinking about, from the New Mexico Environmental Department perspective, kind of where we are. And I want to highlight that Chris Vigil will be helping guide us through the Open Meetings Act pieces, which is another guiding principle of where we need to be as part of this advisory committee process. And then we'll be hearing from some of our New Mexico Environment Department staff on where we are. And I'd like to introduce them now. First, I'd like to introduce Claudia Borchert. She is our She's the leader of our climate change program here at the New Mexico Environment Department and has really been one of the leads on this program over the past couple years. And so she is going to be providing us with more detailed rulemaking timelines as part of her presentation. I also want to highlight our counsel here, Chris V. Hill. He's bringing all of the experience from Open Meetings Act perspective. He's in our Office of General Counsel and will be helping us guide us through, along with perhaps other attorneys from the General Counsel's office as they are able to come on board. I also want to introduce Colt Vaughn, who is our who is one of the leads on this project as well. He brings with him a ton of experience as far as government work, public administration, community outreach. You might recognize him from all of the work that we have done if you participated in our Advanced Clean Cars, Advanced Clean Trucks rulemaking last year. He is really helping assist us with the rulemaking. And I also want to introduce Mike Ford, who you'll hear from later today. I'm proud to say that New Mexico Environment Department actually has a in-house economist for the first time, I think, in its history. So all of the facts and information and experiences that you'll be sharing over today and the next two meetings as far as an economics perspective, we now have the expertise in-house to understand and absorb some of that information in a different way than we were previously. And so we're super happy to have Mike on board with his expertise in economics, because as we all know here, we will be creating a clean fuels market. And so you'll be hearing from him later today as well. Did I miss anybody from the New Mexico? Oh, Melissa White, of course, our amazing facilitator that everybody was introduced to this morning. She will be helping coordinate us and keep us on time through this process. She is our environmental justice coordinator, and I believe it's also the first time we've had an environmental justice. Oh, first time in 16 years. So I would say welcome. Again, he has come on board relatively recently, and so we're really happy to have an environmental justice expert too, to help guide us through some of those guiding principles in the advisory committee process and in the rulemaking. So thank you for being here. And Pam Jones, the wonderful. How can I forget? Pam Jones is also helping us lead. She works for the New Mexico Environment Department as part of our Office of Public Facilitation, and is also helping us move through and keep on track. And all of the great technology and organization you see today is thanks to Pam and Melissa, Claudia, and team. So thanks everybody for being here, and hopefully I didn't forget anybody else. Okay, great. So, we are here to listen, and if you'd like to talk to any one of our team members, you now know who they are. For folks online, we are available through the Clean Fuels website, if you would like to reach out to any of the folks. And so we're always, as public officials, always open to listening and hearing your comments. And so any one of us in the Environment Department will be leading you through this process, and we'll also be participating in it as we move towards developing our draft rules. I want to end by saying that we'll be going through with Claudia in detail kind of our expectations of how the advisory committee is going to work over this meeting and the next couple of meetings, and how we're going to be moving forward with the rulemaking process. I just want to say generally that all of the discussions that we'll be having in the next few meetings will be helping us conceptually understand what kinds of rules that we need to put together for the New Mexico Clean Fuels Program. It's the New Mexico Environment Department that will be, putting together some of those draft rules. Then we'll be going through public participation as far as development of those rules, and then the New Mexico Environment Department will ultimately be the entity responsible for bringing those rules to the Environmental Improvement Board. There will also be several other opportunities for public comment that we'll be covering in Claudia's presentation as well. So thank you everybody for being here, and I will turn it over to Melissa. Hopefully I kept us on time here. Good.
Okay, thank you so much, Michelle and Deputy Secretary Linneman. What we'll be doing next for the next 30 minutes is self-introductions from the advisory committee. There are 32 advisory committee members and there are 30 minutes. So if you could please keep your self-introduction under 1 minute, that would be awesome. We are asking you to state your name, your affiliation, and if you have had a role in other clean fuels standards creation or related work, please state what your role was very briefly. And if it occurred in relation to other states, please name the states that were involved. So I will call your name, and let's get started. Mr. Alaric Babe, is that how we say his name? Oh, thank you.
You got it, yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alaric Babe. I'm with the Public Service Company of New Mexico, otherwise known as PNM. We are the largest investor-owned utility in New Mexico. I oversee all of our customer-facing programs, including energy efficiency, transportation electrification, large-scale renewable energy, advanced technology, and marketing. Very nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too. Amy Brown.
Good morning. I'm Amy Brown. I'm with Adelante Consulting. We're a New Mexico-based environmental and economic development consulting firm. I'm an accredited verifier under California's low carbon fuel standard. My company and I both worked on the various iterations of the clean fuel standard bills here in New Mexico.
Thank you. Anthony Willingham. And
Hi,
Pamela.
everybody. I am Anthony Willingham. I'm the State Government Affairs Manager at Electrify America. Electrify America, we are one of the largest providers of fast chargers in the country. In New Mexico, we've got 9 stations and about 40 chargers. With respect to my experience with low carbon fuel standard, I have been submitting comments and providing testimony before states like Massachusetts and California, New Jersey, and New York in support of clean fuel standards and best practice in designing a program.
Thank you. Brian Bartlett.
Good morning. I'm Brian Bartlett. I'm with Valero Energy. I've been with the company for a little over 25 years. I've spent 15 years of that running our biofuel supply and trading businesses, which included participation in all of the California LCFS development back to 2009-10, and as well as work on all of the Washington and Oregon programs, things in Europe, in the UK with the RTFO, and with the RED 2 and 3 programs. And I've got a background in public policy and strategic planning, and that's where my current position is with Valero.
Thank you. Kara Lynch.
Good morning. My name is Kara Lynch. I am with the Coalition for Clean Affordable Energy. We are a coalition of many regional and national nonprofits. I focus specifically on advocacy before the Public Regulations Commission, which comes into play regarding the CFS for generation of credits. I have experience with a clean fuel standard working with a national group through the Great Plains Institute focused on bringing together various states exploring the implementation and the creation of legislation for a CFS. Those states have included Minnesota, Illinois, Maine, and many others looking into a clean fuel standard.
Thank you. Corey Ann Wind.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Ann Wind. I'm the Director of State Regulatory Program Affairs at Clean Fuels Alliance America. And we are the membership association that represents the biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuels industry. So previous to this, I started at Clean Fuels in January, and previous to that, I spent 30 years at the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and started up and ran the Oregon Clean Fuels program. So in that capacity, worked very extensively with California and Washington and New Mexico in getting programs passed and implemented, and I'm very honored to be here today.
Thank you. Daniel Klein.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Klein. I'm an energy and environmental policy consultant. For many years before I moved to New Mexico in 2012, this was in the Washington, D.C. area, working with a variety of government agencies, industry groups, and NGOs. I still do some of that part-time here in Washington, but I'm also a managing partner of Libertad Power, which is working to develop clean energy transition approaches for utilities and transportation in the Southwest.
Thank you. Dalva Moellenberg.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dal Mullenberg. I'm here on behalf of the New Mexico Mining Association. I chair the Environment Committee of the association, and we have a subcommittee of members interested in this issue, as well as having reviewed the legislation and commented on the legislative process. The Mining Association interests are somewhat varied. The mining industry consumes a large volume of various types of energy, primarily for off-road vehicles and off-road equipment, which are not specifically excluded from this legislation. So that's one of our interests. The mining industry also produces a lot of raw materials and feedstocks for various forms of energy, including copper production, for example, and there are opportunities to produce other minerals useful in energy transition, including things like lithium and rare earth metals. So that's a general discussion of or statement of our interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Eduardo Barrientos.
Good morning. Thank you. Eduardo Barrientos. I'm with ExxonMobil. I'm a policy advisor in managing low carbon fuel standard policies within the United States. So I'm very familiar with the programs in the West Coast and very happy to be here and contribute to this effort. So thank you all.
Thank you. Ethan Epstein.
Hi, Ethan Epstein, tax lawyer, several entities that facilitate transferable incentives. In New Mexico, I think we established kind of the marketplace for green credits, land conservation, sustainability, biomass as well. And so very excited to see how this new transferable system works and hope to be able to participate in that in a different venue. Thanks.
Thank you. Evan Rosenberg.
Good morning. My name is Evan Rosenberg. I'm the Director of Strategy and Business Development for SREC Trade. SREC Trade provides clean fuel credit management and transaction services for a variety of entities that participate in clean fuel programs, including public sector, municipalities, transit agencies, and school districts, EV charging networks, warehouse operators, and other commercial fleet operators. Our focus and expertise is EV charging and other electric vehicle applications under these programs, but we also support credit generation from hydrogen, natural gas, and other types of fuels. We're actively participating in all of the 5 clean fuel programs in North America to date. Excited for there to be a 6th one and hopefully more after that. We've been intimately involved in the creation of laws and advocating for policies, and of course the rulemaking processes throughout the development and sort of maintenance of these programs. So we're very excited to support this one as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to try this name, and I apologize in advance. Gabriel Pasiniak.
Hi, Gabe Pasiniak. I'm a professor of law at UNM School of Law, and I have provided legal and policy advice to the Clean Fuel States Collaborative on CFS design, particularly focused on equity and components with regards to providing equitable benefits from electrification credits, and have a white paper coming out with my co-author Kara Lynch and colleagues at the Harvard Environmental and Energy Law Program. Thank you.
Thank you. Graham Noyes. Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Oh, okay. Folks who are online, if you are not speaking, please keep your cameras off. This helps us with the bandwidth. And Pamela, if you know that someone is not on the advisory committee is not here when I call their name, could you let me know based on your roll call? So last person I called was Graham Noyes. I see.
Hi, Graham Noyes. Sorry, I couldn't
okay.
hear you the first time.
No problem.
My name's Graham Noyes. Really glad to be here. I've been working in low carbon fuel business and policy for 23 years now. Was the founder of the Low Carbon Fuels Coalition. Stepped down end of the year. Robin Veercruz is now the executive director there. I've been involved in the development of all the low carbon fuel standards out there, with the exception of California. I was not back in California when that was established, but have worked on many of the working groups and all the major rulemakings in California. Was involved in the passage of the Oregon bill and was on the advisory committee in Oregon. Was involved in British Columbia in the initial discussions and working group there, involved in Washington in the bill, and am on the alternative jet fuel working group there now, and have been involved in New Mexico from the beginning with NMED and others. And I want to thank everyone for that great collaboration. And I've been involved in bill drafting, providing input in many of the other states, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to work in a really unique environment in New Mexico, interested in particular on SAF crediting issues in the jet fuel space, book and claim, low carbon intensity power, opportunities for electrification and equity provisions here, particularly in tribal areas. And I think I'm glad to hear we have people who know that space better. Thinking about market balance measures, opportunities for oil and gas crediting, and certainly for ski areas and other off-road applications. So really look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane Sadler.
Hi all, my name is Jane Sadler. I'm a Senior Associate of Clean Industrial Policy at RMI. RMI is an international nonprofit. We focus on decarbonization of the world's most polluting sectors. I specifically work in the clean industrial policy. This covers many industrial sectors, but the most relevant ones for today are aviation, long-range trucking, hydrogen, and CDR. So I am primarily focused on the non-electrifiable sectors that are regulated by clean fuel standards. I've coordinated RMI's outreach on the California Clean Fuel Standard, as well as the Washington Clean Fuel Standard, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Jed Smith.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the COO of RVB. We are a biodiesel producer since 2005. I've been in the industry selling and distributing biodiesel for the last 18 years in the Southwest and into California. My expertise is, of course, setting up plants, making biodiesel, and distribution and logistics through all the different phases of distributing biodiesel.
Thank you. Jessica Gregg.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Gregg. I'm currently the Director of Environment and Regulatory Compliance for Carbon America. We're both a cryogenic capture developer as well as CCS developer with CCS projects in 7 states. I've been working on projects evaluating the CARB, Oregon, Washington, BC, and Canada markets for the last couple years. So it's been really interesting to do policy work as those markets have been developing, as well as Colorado, who's, as you know, perhaps having their own market. And we're also evaluating a lot of the voluntary credit markets, so I've been dipping in that and kind of understanding what's going on there. Many of our clients are interested in heading south to New Mexico due to the proximity to our ethanol plants and some of the rail lines. So that initially got me very interested in this task force. And then today is actually my last day here at Carbon America. I've taken a role at Tallgrass Energy in a similar role. And they have projects in New Mexico. So I think this actually became even more pertinent as I transition roles to Tallgrass. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. Joe Serena. I think I see you, Joe, but you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? Maybe we'll come back to you in just a minute while you figure out how to unmute yourself. Carrie Butenhoff.
Hi, I'm Carrie Butenhoff, or Butenhoff, either one. I am from Christensen. We're a CPA firm located in Minnesota. We participate in many of the verification programs. We are accredited in California through the LCFS and their cap and trade MRR, and in Oregon under both their CFP and GHG programs, and in Washington under its GHG, anxiously awaiting the CFP portion of that as well. We're also working on our ISO application to be a verifier in Canada. So we work throughout all of the programs. I've been working in biofuels regulatory for about 17 years and grew up and worked with all of the agencies on developing those programs, and currently serving on the Oregon RAC committee as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's try Joe Serena again, and if he has trouble, Pamela, would you be able to unmute him? Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. My name is Joseph Serena. I've been working with Chevron for the last 22 years. I have a background in fuel specifications as well as state and federal fuel regulations. Bring the expertise of Chevron and the Chevron Renewable Energy Group that's been both a producer of petroleum products as well as a producer of renewable fuels, including biodiesel, renewable diesel, and synthetic aviation fuel. Participated in the several different iterations of House Bill 41, and I'm honored to join you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Carl Feldman.
Yes, I'm actually a new member of the advisory committee. My interest is in energy technology. I was a former professor of mechanical engineering at the University of New Mexico. I was also served for a while as director of energy research for the university. And my interest is to improve air quality in New Mexico and improve our electric vehicle population. I think that's a great idea. The one particular thing that I wanted to introduce is the need for getting lead out of aviation fuel, because currently we have leaded fuel used in piston engine aircraft, and that does not need to be done because there is a new fuel available, and we're in the process of transitioning to that new unleaded fuel. And so I'd like to propose that as a project for the Climate Change Bureau to start that as a project to be funded. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Next is Lloyd Funk.
Lloyd Funk, Phillips 66. I've been in the industry for 35 years. The last 15 years, I was either Director of Fuels Compliance for Phillips 66 and currently Director of Fuels Regulatory Affairs. As such, I either supervised or coordinated our reporting for the California program since it started, the Oregon and Washington programs, and look forward to providing expertise on the implementation of a successful program here in New Mexico.
Thank you. Next is Luis Reyes.
Good morning. My name is Luis Reyes. I am the CEO of Kit Carson Electric Cooperative here in Taos, New Mexico. And I guess my main interest is to make sure that both Kit Carson and all the other 15 distribution co-ops in the state of New Mexico are part of a positive solution in moving this program forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Next is Matthew Wire.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Wire. I'm the Sustainability and Net Zero 2030 Manager for Taos Ski Valley. We're the largest ski resort in New Mexico, and a moderately sized ski resort in the western interior mountains of the U.S. We're heavily invested in sustainability and decarbonization, as my title suggests. I'm excited to do some work here. Thanks.
Thank you. Michael Teague.
Good morning. My name is Mike Teague, and I'm with One Oak. One Oak is a midstream company. We're based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I lead our government relations team, so that's federal, state, and tribal government relations. As a company, One Oak supplies and moves natural gas liquids, and refined products throughout most of the middle of the country. Specific to New Mexico, our interests are very much focused around the refined products pipelines that go all the way up to Albuquerque. Very interested in renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel. My background before joining One Oak, I was the Oklahoma Secretary of both Energy and Environment. And so about 5.5 years of a pretty wide array of public policy issues at the intersection of both energy and environment, which seems to be where we are today. And several of those issues were also transportation, in the transportation area. So appreciate being part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Hagevort.
Yes, good morning. My name is Robert Hageford. I am professor and extension dairy specialist at New Mexico State University. In that role, I work with dairy producers across the state and across the West, looking at those practices that can help them be more efficient and reduce their environmental footprints, and ultimately be able to monetize some of those reductions in carbon, and looking at technologies and ways that they could benefit from that. Obviously, very interested to see what this rule may mean for agriculturalists in general and producers in particular, dairy producers. And that is my interest in being on this advisory committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sam Wade.
Hi, everybody. Sam Wade with the Coalition for Renewable Natural Gas. We're the National Trade Association for the RNG industry. We have over 400 members. We've been actively involved in all the North American clean fuel programs. My background personally is I did work for the California Air Resources Board for almost 10 years, and for 4 of those years I ran the California LCFS. Great to be with everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Teresa Sosa.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Teresa Sosa. I am the environmental manager with El Paso Electric. I have been with the company for 10 years. My experience is mostly in air, wastewater compliance, and I'm pretty excited to be here and be part of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Next is Tiffany. 'Tiffany' 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 'Tiffany'
Hey there. Okay, good. Everything's working. Hi, I'm Tiffany, everybody. Excited to be here and excited for the work. I am with Occidental Petroleum. I'm currently their manager of policy and external affairs for all lower 48. Prior to that, I spent 25 years working upstream oil and gas development and then transitioned to help regulate oil and gas here for the state of New Mexico as a deputy director. My experience with clean fuels has really been through the efforts of trying to get the bill passed here in New Mexico. We have a broader technical team who works this that has also made me aware of the efforts in the other states. And I'm, like I said, excited to be here.
Thank you. Tim Hawks. Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to Todd Trauman.
Hello, hi everybody. I'm Todd Trauman. I'm the CEO of Fuse. Fuse is an aggregator and a technology platform that facilitates access to the electricity provisions, including infrastructure crediting and smart charging crediting for many hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses, charging network operators, municipalities, transit agencies, port tenants, higher education, you name it, across all 5 active jurisdictions right now. We have a very deep understanding of the electricity provision specifically, especially in the non-residential verticals, with a particular expertise in the administrative processes on registration and reporting and credit ownership definitions and other data collection exercises. We've been very active in the regulatory amendment cycles and all of the other programs as well, and we're excited to participate here to support the New Mexico program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Tom Dolmeyer.
I'm Tom Dolmeyer. I'm here as an unaffiliated individual. I'm recently retired as executive engineer for Cummins, where I was responsible for powertrain development for alternate and renewable fuels with combustion engines, as well as fuel cell, battery electric, and hybrid powertrains. And I'm hoping to use my expertise to help this process along.
Thank you. Next is Travis Madsen.
Thanks, everyone. My name is Travis Madsen. I am the Transportation Program Director at the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, which is a nonprofit organization working in New Mexico and 5 other states in the region to save people money, reduce pollution, and advance equity. I've been working on clean transportation and climate policies in a range of states and areas for more than 20 years. I guess in particular, I was an advocate working on the midterm review of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative in the Northeast, promoting policy reforms to make sure that the market would align with the state and federal goals on climate, maximize co-benefits, including savings on energy, improved equity, reduced co-pollutants, and also minimizing unwanted externalities. And I'm hoping to serve a similar role in this process here on clean fuels in New Mexico. I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you so much. And Wish Krishnamurthy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wish, and I'm with Quinergy. I'm the Quinergy. I'm slightly different. I help inventors and investors, and mainly I try to evaluate technologies for investors. And nowadays I'm doing a lot of consulting for decarbonization strategies for a lot of different companies. In doing so, obviously, I look at the economic analysis to make sure it's viable instead of just saying, yeah, it's great for the world, you know. My expertise, it's broad. I worked a lot on solar, a lot of storage, hydrogen, both SMR hydrogen and electrolysis. Work a lot on biomethane projects and also water remediation. And so that's how I come into the picture. And I look at things as the fuel credits should be a starting point, and yet the system must be sustainable. So I try to evaluate things to take it to sustainability. Thanks. Hope I can help.
Thank you, Wish. And thanks to everyone for being so time efficient. Whoops, my little timer just went off. I would now like to turn over the floor to Chris Vigil, Assistant General Counsel for NMED. He will be talking about open meeting requirements.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Vigil, Assistant General Counsel for the New Mexico Environment Department, and I work exclusively in the Air Quality Bureau. I'm here to talk about the Open Meetings Act this morning. In order to make sure that we have transparency, these meetings are going to be run according to the Open Meetings Act. Without getting too much into the weeds about what that is and what the requirements are. Basically, it's a statute that was passed that requires that any time any kind of public body that's been appointed by any agency engages in any public discussions that may result in public policy or any sort of discussion along that lines should be open to the public. And the requirements that are relevant for you are that we have a certain requirement to post an agenda, to give notice to the public, give an opportunity for the public to be involved, and then as each meeting will produce minutes. So you don't have to worry about any of the deadlines, you don't have to worry about notice, you don't have to worry about the agenda. Internally, the department will take care of all that. We have a website, you may or may not know, where we will post all those things, but we will take care of the deadline, we will post the agenda, we'll post the notice, and we will develop the minutes. Your role will be to approve the minutes. You will need to, and I think the next, actually approve agendas as well, but we can get into that next meeting. You will need to elect someone who's a representative who can be a signatory, because we'll have to develop an open meetings policy. So that's about it. It's really just a statute and a set of procedures that are, designed to bring transparency to the process. Do you have any questions? I'm happy to field any. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, Chris. So in just a moment, we will be taking a 15-minute break. I hope you enjoyed your break. I'm calling the meeting back to order. What's coming up next is some comments from Claudia Borchert. Sorry, I'm mixed up with my papers here. Claudia is the chief of the Climate Change Bureau at the New Mexico Environment Department. And Claudia will share with us for about 15 minutes. And then, Claudia, if you could pass it along to Mike Ford when you are done with your part. And I'm going to vacate the premises here.
Okay. Mike on. Is that, you can hear me? Yes? Good morning, everyone. We're so happy to have you here today. We are thrilled to be embarking on the rulemaking process around these clean fuel standards that, as you've heard, took several years to get to the point where it became law. I also want to wish you guys a happy solstice and a happy strawberry full moon. It's very fun that all of that is happening today, and also the fact that it is cloudy today and perhaps going to rain, right? So those are all a lot of fun things to set the stage for us here today. All right, next slide, please. Can you advance, or do you want me to? I'll advance. You can try. Make sure I'm pointing this the right way. Sure. Boom. I think you got to point it at his laptop, which has the on it. So I wanted to cover basically first a little bit about the process for the advisory committee, how that's going to be useful in helping us move forward with the rule development. So this slide really shows the timeline going from now, the advisory committee, top left, to program implementation, bottom right. And the timeline you can see basically going from June or July now all the way to the spring of next year. And just want to highlight the fact that the rule development really is has been going on and has really became more serious once the statute was approved, became law, and now this is an important component to that rule development. And I just want to highlight what the steps are that go forward, because some of you may not be as familiar with how the rulemaking process works for the Environmental Improvement Board. So we develop the rules, then NMED petitions the Environmental Improvement Board, that's been referenced here in the past, asking them to have a hearing on the proposed rules. Those are what we call the petition rules, petition draft rules. And along with our petition is also a statement of reasons for why we want those rules to be approved. And the EIB then has a decision to make on whether they're willing to have a hearing on the proposed rules, and then they set a hearing date. That hearing date has to be at least 60 days after they approve the petition. So if we're looking at going to the EIB with our petition draft in the late summer, early fall, then at a minimum 60 days after that is the period in which the hearing will be set. That will really depend very much on the schedule of the EIB. There's 6 members, I think, on that 7-member board right now, and obviously they have a lot of things on their plate, so they have to make it work for them as well. So that'll be a hearing sometime in the winter of this year, hopefully. And then they also need to, they have a process of deliberating on their rules. Not only will there be a hearing, but there will be also the opportunity for parties to participate in that hearing. They will consider all the public comments made. They will deliberate. We have to publish and they have to make a decision. That all gets published. And then after all that is the first effective date of the rules, which we anticipate will be in the spring sometime of next year. I also just want to mention that, ongoing to not only the this process and our rulemaking process is the public engagement process and the tribal engagement process. So, those are all the way that we promulgate rules at NMED. It's very important that we have these conversations with all of the people in New Mexico. You guys bring special expertise and experience, which is why we've asked you to participate here in this advisory committee. And we also actively engage with anyone in the public or other stakeholders who also want to participate. Okay, so I know you thank you, Mike. Next slide is perfect. So what are we thinking about here in terms of the advisory committee process? So we have 3 meetings planned for this advisory committee. Today, of course, next Friday, and then July 12th. Those are all Fridays, 9 to 12. We would like to have a technical report come out of that process, and that we will then publish and open what we call a smart comment portal on that report, that all of you, as well as anybody from the public, can comment on. And so that will be, Chris Vigil mentioned before the need for transparency. We are just making sure that, also as Michelle mentioned earlier, that this process is informed by your experience and expertise and is open to all of you to be participating and providing NMED feedback as we develop the rules. So we anticipate all that happening sometime, hopefully wrapping up before the end of July, if everything goes well. And then looking to August, September to petition the Environmental Improvement Board in that process I just mentioned earlier, which is really, all of that is the rule development phase. And I also just want to, mention how much I appreciate your participation in this. The more you let us know about the things that you have experience in, the better those rules are going to be. So we really appreciate you being here, sharing with us, talking to us, so that we can develop those rules that work for all of us and work for New Mexico. All right, my last slide. Let's just click through to where everything shows up. Just have it all come through. Didn't realize this is animated. All right, keep going. There's more. And one more. All right, there we go. So remembering how important it is that we provide transparency. We want a lot of the technical information that you're going to be sharing, that you have and want to share, to happen in the context of these meetings. So if you have an idea, or if you want to make sure that that we're aware of something, please bring it up here in this public forum so that we can all hear it. We can all be the beneficiaries of that. It's also going to be recorded, which means that we can all go back and look at it. Those recordings will be on our website. And then once we write the technical report, then we would really appreciate all of you submitting comments on that technical report. Again, through this process, the smart comment portal that will allow anybody to look at what comments people have made, and us in particular, NMED. Those comments will really be, in my mind, focused towards NMED, towards the rulemaking team, to make sure that we are aware of what we need to be aware of as we do the rule development. And after we file our petition with the NMED, which is the first time that those rules will really be daylighted, then we'll have a robust public meeting process, and we welcome all of you to participate in that. At that point also, Pam, on behalf of the Environmental Improvement Board, will open Smart Comment Portal on those draft rules. And we welcome all of you to comment. In that case, they're more focused on EIB and their deliberation, any comments you want to make on the rules for EIB to consider. Then, of course, the EIB process, should they agree to have a hearing, is also a public process. You can become a party, or you can provide public comments at that hearing, and then and have the EIB consider your comments, your proposals, your changes during that process as well. So I just want to make sure that we understood how we are looking forward to hearing from all of you. And I just want to the analogy that's somewhat cliche but is still very true is the elephant, right? The rules in some ways are the elephant, and and all of us are have an idea of what the ear looks like, the eye looks like, the tail, the hairs on the torso, whatever it is. We all understand there's a part of the elephant that some of us may have a better understanding of than the other, right? And our goal is to really create the elephant together. And so the more that you guys can help us understand what your part of the elephant looks like, the better the elephant will be. All right? So appreciate that.
Thanks, Claudia. Just a few more comments. Just wanted to highlight that for purposes of the advisory committee, as discussed this morning, although this is an advisory committee that's informing the rules, it has no more or less weight than other public participants, and so just wanted to reiterate that. I also wanted to highlight an overlay to this piece, which might not have made it into the third slide, but is inherent and expressly in the third slide, but is inherent within it, which is our tribal engagement process and our tribal collaboration process. And so we will be, of course, engaging with tribes across New Mexico to make sure that they are able to participate as well and help us and help inform us as we develop the rules. I also want to add that the rules that we are expecting to bring to the Environmental Improvement Board later this year are going to be as comprehensive as possible, with the understanding that, as set forth in HB 41, these rules will need periodic review. We're creating a market with different rules to that market, and as all of us know who have been following the clean fuels markets in other states, there's a lot of lessons learned from those states, and so we want to make sure that we are periodically reviewing our rules and ensuring that they're working for us. And so that piece, as far as periodic review, will come up, and it will be a convening of a separate advisory committee. So this advisory committee time will end once the technical report ends. And then when we do a review of the rules, we will be convening an advisory committee at that point to make sure that the next, any amendments, the next iteration, or whatever we decide, is appropriate going forward to make sure that the market is working well, that we will convene an advisory committee at that point. And that could also depend on how the market's working and the expertise needed to inform that. And so I just wanted to touch on that. And I know that it's pretty wonky in terms of administrative processes, so we are ahead of schedule, so I did want to take a few minutes to see if anybody had any questions about process before we move into some of the substantive presentations, beginning with Michael Ford here. Pam, is there anybody online that's... Okay. The last couple things Well
done. Thank you. Prentice Searles with the American Petroleum Institute. Just a quick question. It was mentioned that you can become a party or submit public comments after the, I think it's the EIB. I got a little lost in the process.
Yes.
So I was hoping you could point out where that might kick in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. So there will be opportunity for public comment at the conclusion of the advisory committee meetings here once the technical document is produced. So that will be an opportunity for folks to submit their comments on what has been discussed in this meeting and the next two meetings. And so there will be an opportunity for comment then. There'll also be an opportunity for comment, once, of course, we petition the board, there will be a draft set of rules that will come out with that petition. We'll have opportunities for public participation, whether that be individuals or entities. Especially after those rules come out, we want to make sure that we're getting some feedback on what folks think about those rules. And so there will be ample opportunity either through public comment directly to the board. You can request a meeting with the NMED team directly. We have, as always, our meeting request forms online to discuss particularities of the rule. And of course, there'll be opportunities to participate in formal public meetings that the Environment Department will be holding throughout the rest of the summer and the fall. Dow.
Thank you. I'm thinking about how the process is going to work with regard to the technical report. Is the technical report something that staff is going to prepare? And I mean Environment Department staff and advisory committee members are going to comment on. Have you thought about what kind of process the advisory committee might be engaged in terms of approving a report, or is it just going to be comments, or could you elaborate a little bit on that process?
Sure, yes. We will be collecting all that it's discussed here in minutes, and then we have presentations that we will be hearing from advisory committee members. At the end of the meeting, we'll talk a little bit about some of the topics for meeting 2 and meeting 3 that concern with the market, credit generation, and the purchase of credits from deficit and the timelines on that. And so we anticipate putting, as part of the technical report, collecting all of that work that's presented in this meeting and those subsequent meetings. The Environment Department will collect them all. It's not going to be anything other than what is discussed and presented here. And then we will publish it. And then the public, including the members of the advisory committee, can comment on that report. Claudia, I'll turn it over to you if I forgot anything on that, or, okay.
Thank you. I think that answers my question. It sounds then like the advisory committee and members wouldn't necessarily be taking an action on the technical report, but just having it available to comment on as with other
Correct. Any other questions about process? I know we in government love our processes, so when we have created several of them. Pam, any other online folks? Great. I know we're a few minutes early, so I just wanted to take a preview as we move into the substantive panel discussions as to what the intention was moving to the agenda going into the next hour or so, and then also what the Environment Department's thinking of as proposing to the advisory committee as we move forward with the agendas for meetings 2 and 3. And so because we are all coming, as we heard with the introductions, we're all coming at this particular process with different experiences in different states and different interests and different knowledges and experiences. We want to make sure that you hear from the Environment Department, particularly Mr. Ford, our economist, on kind of what we're thinking about from an economics perspective and from a market perspective, and the goals we have as part of HB 41, and then how we're thinking about the market and where House Bill 41 directs us to go as part of the law. And so we would like to kind of provide you with some insight into how we're thinking about developing the market. We're then going to be moving to a presentation by Corey Ann Wind, who will help orient us to a common vocabulary of how we're talking about the market, the clean fuels market, as of solstice 2024, summer solstice 2024, so that it's a common vocabulary we can all use going forward with some of the discussions that we'll be having and some of the presentations that different advisory members will be providing. And we also have, the Tauski Valley, who's appearing at the committee today to provide us with some insight as to the demand that we're seeing. We know there's an electricity demand. We also know that there's a demand in our state for fuels other than electricity. This will help us solve some of our decarbonization issues, right? I mean, we have electricity for some things cannot be electrified. So what does that look like, and how can this, what are some thoughts about the folks that are part of the demand of some of the fuels that will be subject to the program. I also want to provide a preview to meeting 2 as to what we're thinking, and then meeting 3. So for meeting 2, we would like to really start exploring the idea of the credit, the idea of what the credit is, how the credit is verified, and I know we have some experts on the call that introduce themselves. We want to make sure our credits are verified, enforceable, and are things of value, and we want to hear about credit generation. And we want to hear in that second meeting perhaps from folks that are in the clean fuel space, perhaps in other markets, about what we need to do to create a program that can create the credits that we need, that creates the framework for the credits that we need, and the fuels we need to generate the credits, and the infrastructure we need to generate the credits, if we do, to meet our carbon reduction goals. And then I think that the third meeting, we're inclined, in July 12th meeting, we really want to explore some of the ideas about the credit deficits and what the timelines might look like as far as implementation of, when the market folks, or the people in the market that need to purchase credits will have to start purchasing those credits, and what that looks like with our timeline of decarbonization under HB 41. So we really want to kind of delve into market mechanics and what the experts here and, that we've convened as part of this committee have to say on some of those pieces that Mike will, talk more about in his presentation. So we'll talk, that's a little preview into going into the panel presentation and a preview into some of the stuff that some of the items that we're thinking about for the next couple of meetings, and we'll hear more on that and the processes that we need to follow in order to get to those points later in the meeting. So with that, I will, question?
I'm sorry, ma'am. This might be an untimely. I just wanted to see if there's also, from an administrative standpoint, a way to get stakeholder participant name and contact information. I mean, I know we just covered the Open Meetings Act. I'm on the Spaceport Board as well. I know you don't want to have these hidden meetings or anything, but I just thought it'd be a way to kind of meet and introduce people amongst each other, and I wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think maybe Chris Vigil and Melissa White can guide us through those requirements about what we can and can't do as far as advisory committee members communicating amongst themselves for purposes of Open Meetings Act. I know that that's a particular spot that we need to be mindful of given the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, and so we'll hear from them on that because I think that's a very good question. Thank you. Okay, any more questions? Oh, that's just Ethan. Okay, great. With that, I will turn it over to Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. All right. Hello. How's everybody doing today? I am pleased to be here to present for you. I very much appreciate having the Bob Barker microphone here as the economist. I feel like it's very apropos. You know, the price is right is a question that we're asking ourselves a lot here about the Clean Fuel Standard. Is the price right? Well, I'll be your Bob Barker for that portion of the presentation. I'm the economist, the first full-time economist at the New Mexico Environment Department, which is a great honor. I've previously worked with the Energy Information Administration tracking fuel markets, in addition to doing energy leasing at the Bureau of Land Management, doing energy markets at Sandia National Lab, working for an energy startup company, and now working as an economist here for the state of New Mexico. This, I have to say, is the probably that more than any other time, the time that I've really felt like I was moving the needle on environmental policy and really changing the status quo and helping as part of a really groundbreaking effort. You all have heard that we are the 5th state in North America to adopt a clean fuel standard, the 4th. I don't know if you count British Columbia as a state. We're the 4th state, not province, in America to adopt a clean fuel standard. And it's pretty groundbreaking. We're the first one that is not a coastal state. So there's a lot of interesting facets that come with that as well. Claudia mentioned her analogy was drawing the elephant for how to walk through this policy. I look at it more as kind of a spaghetti bowl where you're tracking every single noodle in the bowl. They're all intertwined. They all affect each other. But you want to understand where you fit into all of that. And my job as the economist is to simplify that spaghetti bowl and explain it in a way that makes sense to people and translate from econ into English, or Spanish. So I'm here to do that for you all, and I want to be a resource to everybody on this committee as we talk about markets and credits and all of this sort of somewhat complicated jargony subject matter. I want to explain the Clean Fuel Standard to you, but first I want to talk about where it fits in relative to the state's overall goals for climate policy. So some may be aware, others may not, about the 2019 executive order signed by our governor that targets a 45% reduction statewide across all sectors in greenhouse gases by 2030 compared to emissions in 2005. Looking between 2005 and our last national emission, our last statewide emissions inventory in 2018, 2005 in this graph represented by the blue bars, 2018 represented by the orange bars. It's organized from left to right by sector in terms of lowest to highest emitting. You'll notice transportation is second from the right. It is the highest emitting sector in the state outside of oil and gas. Unlike, say, oil and gas to its right or electricity generation to its left, you'll see with those two sectors a big delta between the blue bar in 2005 and the orange bar in 2018. They have started already to make headway into hitting their reduction targets. Transportation, that second from the right, is a bit more stubborn and requires policy drivers to get it to begin achieving that same effect in order to hit that 2030 goal. And so you'll hear the year 2030 a lot because we have a 2030 goal as well, not a coincidence. So good progress has been made in transportation. There's clearly more needed near term to hit that goal. Enter the Clean Transportation Fuel Standard. I want to try to just very briefly describe the Clean Transportation Fuel Standard and what it does. And you'll see on this graph two large black dots along a declining line. The line is the decrease in the carbon intensity measured as units of CO2 emissions from well to wheel of a fuel pathway's life cycle divided by units of energy supplied of that fuel. The reduction, the hard targets in this rule are those two big black dots. A 20% reduction below 2018 levels by the year 2030, and then a 30% reduction below those 2018 levels by the year 2040. The dashed line indicates that that path is speculative. The way we get there is wide open to different possibilities and prospects. The thing that's not wide open is that those targets are fixed. The paint is dry on those targets. How we fill the rest of the mural is what we are here to discuss. The way that this market works, and I know this is not news to some of you, and in fact this might be exactly the 5th time some of you have heard about it in North America, is there are fuels that have a carbon intensity above our increasingly ambitious greenhouse gas reduction targets. Some of those fuels generate what are known as deficits. To address those deficits, you have a couple of options. One is decarbonizing your own fuel pathway through numerous options in order to do that. Another is purchasing credits from credit generators in equal amounts to the deficits to offset those deficits, creating a market for those credits. There, in the blue area below this line, are credit generating fuels. Those could be things like electricity, biogas, any number of other fuels you've heard mentioned already today, and that some of you specialize in full time. Those fuels generate credits because they have a carbon intensity that is below the standard that can be sold in a market. What fuels should generate credits? We are agnostic on that question. We are tech agnostic. What we care about are what the well-to-wheel life cycle emissions and impacts are of those credit generating fuels. The goal is to have those credit generating fuels offer the best deal to the deficit generators for their dollar. We're using the market and the forces of competition, and you've heard Michelle talk about this when she's presented. She said the word market about 5 times. I will say it about 15 more. Markets are how this works, and it gets these credit generators to compete with one another. What we are interested in with this committee is learning from you all, folks with a great deal of experience in this, in how you see this happening, how you see this taking place, what your thoughts are on what we need to do to generate the levels of credits that are necessary to get there. We want to hear from you, your thoughts and your ideas about how that market will take shape, as well as your questions about what you'd like to know about how this is going to look like as we fill in this painting together. Some folks in here might be from credit generators that are raring ready to go. We've got credits ready to sell. Where do we sign up? Some folks may need 2-3 years of CapEx or to completely pivot their business model or have numerous concerns addressed and answered before they can jump straight into the pool, that's fine. We can go in one step at a time, and we can talk about what that looks like. But really, we want to know, from your perspective, how you see that panning out. And in terms of what we can learn from what's out there already, I will be bringing up next Corianne Wind. Michelle's already very nicely introduced Corianne to you all, and she has experience working on clean fuels policy in other states. And like Michelle said, she can bring you all up to speed on the terminology, some of the nuances of this policy, and walk you all through what she has learned from her own experiences. So without further ado, Corianne, it is my great honor and pleasure to bring you up to present on behalf of yourself and your organization. So we'll go ahead and pass the mic.
Thank you for that. Let me start by saying thank you very much for having me here today. I do work for the Clean Fuels Alliance America right now. I think even though the logo is prominently on all of my slides, I'm going to take off the Clean Fuels Alliance America hat right now. I'm going to kind of put on my emeritus, Oregon Clean Fuels Program hat. And, as asked by the New Mexico Environment Department folks, really wanted to kind of have a few words as far as, a basic introduction to other programs, some level setting. I think, as most of you know about a low carbon, clean transportation fuel standard, there are many, many, many details. By no means am I going to go into all of the details, but there's a couple of messages that I kind of want you to take home with you today. One is that there has been many years of implementation and lessons learned from California, from Oregon, and from Washington. That I think behooves all of the stakeholders on this meeting today to kind of pay attention to. Even in Oregon, when we first started our program, California was the only state that had been implementing, as well as British Columbia and Canada. I don't want to leave them out. But even the lessons learned from those two programs very much informed how we set up the program in Oregon. Michael, Michelle, Claudia have all kind of said this before. This is a market-based program, and the market has lots of opinions about what works, what doesn't work. And I think as much harmonization that can actually happen between the implementing jurisdictions is good, I'd say, but it's also very clear that each of the states' legislatures have given their implementing regulatory agencies specific directions on some things to do. So keeping both of those things in mind are really kind of like what I've always encouraged other states that are contemplating these clean fuel standards to kind of go and move forward with. So next slide, Michael. So again, what I just wanted to give you a flavor of in a slide like this is just a few things. Again, these spreadsheets could go on and on and on as far as details, but a few ideas about how certain things, and a lot of things actually, are harmonized between the implementing programs. So with the programs that are being implemented in California, in Oregon, and in Washington, there are many, many things that are aligned. I typically say that there's about 90% of a program that is harmonized, and the harmonization is really intended to create the framework for the market to be able to operate, so that you know the rules of the game, amongst the states, so that companies that are investing in these markets know how they compete with each other, where the opportunities are, and be able to make those business decisions. So certain things like what fuels are, covered under these regulations. Are they regulated? Are they opt-in as credit generators? Are they exempt? And who has the responsibilities to either comply with the regulations for reporting, for registration, for a lot of those kinds of things? A lot of those things are harmonized. And so again, it doesn't make sense to kind of like recreate the wheel in those cases. But something like exempt uses or exempt fuels is something that varies quite differently between the states, and that's some things that happened in statute language. So obviously, as it's directed in the New Mexico and House Bill 41, those are some things that will have to be implemented specifically for the New Mexico regulation. So, I want to highlight something maybe in the fourth row, something like how to obtain a fuel pathway. So if you are a producer of a fuel and that fuel is used in the state of New Mexico, how do you actually apply for a pathway, right? So how do you get a carbon intensity that is actually approved by the agency to be able to generate credits in the program? This is something that California has done very, very well. And so one of the ways that Oregon has designed the program to take advantage of that is that if there's a pathway that's already approved by the state of California, the Air Resources Board there for their LCFS, if it's already approved for that, they can submit that application to the state of Oregon. And there are just maybe 2 or 3 things that change, right? We are talking about the pathway of a fuel. So how the fuel goes to Oregon as opposed to California matters. And so, but that's just a little tweaks in the model as opposed to redoing a whole, a whole new model itself. When Washington Department of Ecology adopted their rules, they adopted provisions very similar to that. So if a pathway has already been approved in Oregon and or California, they can also certify that pathway for use in Washington. So this is some of the ways that you can really just leverage on these existing programs to make it more efficient for all of the participants in the program. There are definitely differences in the programs between the jurisdictions as well. And so, and again, I think if we, as this advisory committee moves forward in meetings 2 and 3, I think it sounds like there's going to be some of those topics where expertise from the participants is going to be really important, and to identify, those things that should be common to all of the jurisdictions, and maybe some things that might be different. And so, anyway, I'm not going to go through this entire table. Like I said, it was just intended to kind of give you a flavor of the kinds of things that are common and are different between the jurisdictions. Okay. Next slide, Michael. Okay. So what I wanted to do as well is just do a little bit of level setting as far as the other jurisdictions. And so here, what I just put up on a slide is the different carbon reduction targets that exist in the different jurisdictions right now. So here, I know it's a little bit hard to read with the steel background, but here in the California is in the red line. And there's a part of California that actually is the solid red line. These are targets that are already in their regulation. And then what the dotted line is proposed targets that are going through the California rulemaking process right now. I'll speak a little more to that later. What you see in the yellow line is the Oregon program. The Oregon program has targets set out to 2035. That's a 37% carbon intensity reduction. And then and it just levels off after that. And what you see in the green line is Washington. So there are targets for 2033, 2035, and moving out as well. So that just kind of gives you an idea of where everybody, the three states are right now as far as stringency of their programs and what it looks like moving out to the future. I will say here that, you know, since California is in rulemaking right now, I mean, their intent is to have targets out to 2045. And so that's why you see that curve there. I think, as Michelle mentioned earlier today too, is that these programs are not the kinds of programs where you just set it and leave it. There are many, many moving targets. There's different changes in technologies, different changes in the science. And, you know, there's a careful balance with the regulatory agencies as far as producing enough regulatory certainty so that the market knows what's coming next, but also recognition that things can change and will change in the future. So lots of rulemakings. Okay, next slide. What I wanted to do here is I pulled some data from the 3 jurisdictions that are implementing right now. And just to give you a flavor of kind of like what the different kinds of fuels and their significance and importance and the trends in these different jurisdictions. As you all know, a clean transportation fuel standard is fuel agnostic. So any of the fuels that are lower carbon than what the standards are in the areas, you know, have that ability to generate credits. And it is telling that from as you go on in time, that the profile of the different fuels and how important they are to credit generation change. So, for example, California started implementing the program in 2011. And so you can see that they've got 13 years of transition in the California transportation fuels market, where you know, you can see the different kind of contributions of the different fuels. So ethanol as you know, replacement for gasoline. BD is biodiesel, RD is renewable diesel, electricity, renewable natural gas, hydrogen, naphtha as a replacement for fossil gasoline as well, and LPG propane. So those are the fuels that are being reported by the different states. You can see in California that there's a lot of different fuels that contribute to their reductions. Most notably, the renewable diesel has become very popular in the state, and that electricity, as zero-emission vehicle regulations come into play, have become an increasingly prominent point of credit generation, as well as renewable natural gas as well. Very, very, very low and negative carbon intensities that are associated with some of those pathways. So California started in 2011, Oregon started in 2016. So that's, you know, seven years worth of progress in the transition for the fuels in Oregon there. And you can see like a slightly different profile. There is, you know, ethanol credits are still about 20%, but, you know, an increasingly amount of renewable diesel. And actually a hefty still contribution of biodiesel in Oregon as well. Oregon's also a ZEV state, and so you do see those electricity credits, and you anticipate those becoming more prominent in the future. But yeah, so you see a slightly different profile. Washington has just started their program in 2023, so this is just actually represents maybe just 3 quarters worth of data. But, you know, so you see a lot of credits that are still being generated from liquid biofuels. Washington is also a ZEV state, so again, you will see this electricity credits really ramping up in the future. But what I really intended to show these to you for is that you can kind of get hints into what you could be seeing in New Mexico as the program becomes implemented. As you see the different pathways and the carbon intensities, the different technologies transition in New Mexico. There's that school of thought where you think that it'll follow the same kind of path that California, Oregon, and Washington have already experienced, or that because you're starting now in 2025, that it'll be very different than when California started in 2011. So, okay, next slide. And something I just really wanted to touch on really quickly, because as Michael reminds us, this is a market-based program, and a lot of times the thing that you point to the health of the program or the liquidity of the market or those, like how are investors seeing the opportunities in New Mexico, a lot of that goes back to credit prices. So as the credits in the New Mexico program begin trading, that is what sets this litmus test of how the market is actually performing. What you see here in the red is the California, and the yellow again is Oregon, and Washington is green. What's interesting to me, as when Oregon started its program, after California had several years participating in it, it's like if you see the first couple of years in Oregon very much followed the trend of California, and California was at a premium and Oregon was just slightly less. And then there was a point in 2022 where there was this divergence of that correlation, and this is where because of different programs are designed differently, how many credits are being generated, how big the bank is growing, which fuels are playing what roles in the different states, where there can be different changes in how the market performs. There was a point where then Oregon credit prices were actually higher than California, and that was frankly, sitting in the Oregon seat at the time, surprising, but that very satisfying that there was this potential, that there was this way to not only just assume that all of these lower carbon fuels would just go to California, but if you're looking at the credit prices, it indicated that there was opportunities in Oregon that didn't exist but for the low carbon fuel standard, to bring those lower carbon, cleaner fuels to the state. I think my message, right, what you see here right now is that there is kind of a convergence of the California, Oregon, and Washington market prices right now. At this point, I am not an economist like Michael, and so I don't know why that is, but I mean, it is a very definite, it's an observation that that all of the credit prices are about the same right now. Right?
Pardon me for interrupting, Corianne. I see a hand from Ethan Epstein. If you'd like to if this is a clarifying question, Ethan, do you have a question for Corianne?
Yes, ma'am. With respect to those other states and the price variations, and I think it's an excellent slide, are those, and our system is a certified one that's very analogous to many other state tax credit systems in New Mexico that are transferable. So my question is, and I think that has price effects too, do all those other states have some kind of certification process for their carbon credit generation?
Right. So generally how it works is that all of the participants in the program, so anybody that's providing fuel, so whether it's a deficit generating fuel, credit generating fuel, all of that is reported to the agency, so to NMED. And so it is how much and of what carbon intensity the fuels are. And that's how you calculate your credits and deficits. And so, and then the NEBD will also be hosting the platform by which those credits then can be sold and transferred from one party to another. So it's, I sold, X amount of credits at what price to another party, and then the agency is actually publishing those values so that there's market transparency. So in the case of Washington and Oregon, that it happens on a monthly basis. In California, because the market is more active, that is published on a weekly basis, I believe, just to give everybody an idea of what that going market price is.
Thank you.
Okay. Next. I just wanted to, okay, so this slide is it's messy and it's got a lot of details, but I think what I wanted to just point out right now is California, Oregon, Washington are all currently in rulemaking. So as I mentioned before, this is not just adopt it and leave it kind of a regulation. But there are certain things that are very important to have regulatory certainty, the targets. And then there's a lot of technical details, implementation, reporting, verification, compliance, enforcement, all these kinds of things that also need to be constantly, worked on to make sure that they are efficient and doing what is intended to be. I would also say too that because there is a lot of harmonization amongst the policy, that every time California changes a rule, and Oregon changes the rule, and Washington changes the rule. I mean, there is that aspect of a cycle of trying to remain consistent amongst the jurisdictions as well. So the big rulemaking that is going on right now, California's is adopting targets moving out from 2030 all the way up to 2045. There is a rulemaking process that has been going on for about a year. That a number of the provisions in the regulation are being updated. So that public hearing is scheduled for later this year, November 2024, and a lot of stakeholders have been engaged in that process for a long time now. Oregon's rulemaking is much smaller in scope and is really intended to have that, what the primary goal there is to update the GREET model. So GREET is the model that is used to calculate the carbon intensities. Every once in a while there is updates to the models. And so in the California rulemaking, they are going from CalGREET 3.0 to 4.0. And so similarly, Oregon is updating its rules to update Oregon or GREET from 3.0 to 4.0. And so, and that is really, like as I pointed out before, for efficiency's sake. So somebody that's already applying for a pathway in California can then have the same version of the model, have that approved by the state of Oregon. And so that's the main focus of the rulemaking. Washington is also in rulemaking as well. And so there are a couple of things that are the focus of the rulemakings. I think what's important in Washington is what's not being updated. So they're not updating targets. They set targets 2 years ago. They are also not updating their GREET model because they recently did that as well. But there are some things in Washington, provisions for sustainable aviation fuel that have complementary regulations for Washington tax credit is something that they're doing. And they're also adding in some elements that they didn't do in their initial clean fuel standard rulemaking, such as compliance enforcement, verification requirements, those kinds of things. So those kinds of things will update the Washington program to be consistent with Oregon and California. Again, you don't have to do all of it at the same time. There are some basic minimums that have to be included in the initial rulemaking, but there are always opportunities for updates and modifications and iterations. Okay. Next slide. And just to kind of throw this out to you all too, there are a handful of other states that are still looking at adopting low carbon fuel standards. And so here, I just put it in alphabetical order, the states that have had bills introduced in conversations about. I think the only one right now that is still active in a legislature is Massachusetts. I think they've taken a rest over the weekend and is going to start picking up conversations again on Monday. All of the rest of the bills are not in active conversations right now, but there's definitely interest in lots of other states to take advantage of the many benefits of the low carbon fuel standard that have been experienced by the jurisdictions that have already implemented it. So I think that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Corianne. We really appreciate it. Nice work. Holy moly, is there a lot to think about when it comes to these clean fuel standards? And so we've seen some of the efforts from California, from Oregon, from Washington, a lot of the different nuances that they are dealing with to converge their policies and sort of standardize some of the expectations that industry has and try to make it work in the best way that they can. New Mexico, of course, is different from those three states, as Corianne correctly noted. And one way that we are different is we have the best skiing, snowboarding, and winter sports of any state that has adopted the clean transportation fuel standard, I think hands down. And I believe that the next gentleman who will be presenting would agree with that statement. He is unique in that he is representing a purchaser of clean fuels, not as a credit buyer, but as a clean fuels buyer because he needs them for his ski valley. This is Matthew Weyer, who we will bring up from Taos Ski Valley to talk about his experience, and we're going to keep it to 10 minutes, hopefully, Matt, and leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. Thank you so much, and Matt, without further ado.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, hopefully we'll keep it to 10 minutes and not talk too much about some fun skiing. Well, I can't decide which anecdote I want to use or analogy I want to use. Mike's noodle analogy or Claudia's elephant analogy, but either way, I'm here to speak to you about our portion of what we're doing in Taos Ski Valley to decarbonize, to electrify, and just to be sustainable in general. Mike, I'm going to go through these slides pretty quick, so sorry about that. So, what's really driving Taos Ski Valley's our work to be sustainable, to reduce our carbon footprint? We exist in a very pristine mountain environment, and we see the effects of climate change almost daily. We've had a ton of severe weather events. We have difficulty, with low snowpack years. Snowfall is becoming more and more hard to predict, and there's just a lot of things that are affecting our business as a ski resort. And so that's what's driving us to, want to be a better steward for the environment. And in 2019, Taos Ski Valley announced a very ambitious goal to be zero emission or net zero by 2030. And that was not the start of our sustainability journey, but it was, the announcement of it's crunch time. We need to do something, and we need to be a leader in the snow sports industry for others. So this image on the right side of the slide is not necessarily, it's our sort of sustainability mountain, but we're not doing these projects in this order, but we're sort of picking and choosing as technology allows. We're doing some vehicle and equipment electrification, targeted electrification, and obviously we had to do a ton of work with our energy infrastructure to bring it up to standard to be able to accept everything that we want to do to electrify our operations. And a quick shout out to Luis Reyes at Kit Carson Electric, who's on this call as well. We are very fortunate to have Kit Carson Electric as our utility provider, and we take great advantage of their 100% daytime solar electric goal. we typically purchase of the electricity that we purchase, between 10 and 15% of our energy comes from locally produced solar energy from Kit Carson, which is a huge advantage that we have. Next slide, please. And Mike, if you want to pop through all these animations. So just where, we saw scope 3 on that last slide. We're not going to focus on scope 3, although we are doing a lot of work in that space. But looking at scope 1 and 2, the ski industry, ski resorts as a whole, are extremely resource intensive. We use a ton of electricity, a ton of natural gas, propane, diesel, gasoline, and other fuels. So just to kind of give a breakdown of our energy end uses, during the summer, we run just a couple of ski lifts for mountain biking, for hiking, for folks to get onto the mountain and explore. In the winter, it's a different story. We are at peak power usage, and we're a winter nighttime peaking load for a utility. We have 12 ski lifts in the winter. All of them are electric drive motors, but they also, all of our ski lifts have diesel backup. Mike, I'm not seeing this. Thank you. For vehicles and equipment, we're unique that we have 86 departments in the ski area, and all of them have sort of their own miniature fleet. But we have, everything from passenger vehicles, light and heavy duty trucks, all the way up to excavators, wheel loaders, dump trucks. And in the winter, especially when we're operating at full capacity, we have a full fleet of snowcats and snowmobiles and a whole bunch of other machines. So we use a ton of fuel. I want to say we use anywhere between 60 and 80,000 gallons of diesel, and probably about the same in gasoline. For our buildings, because of our unique environment, we use a lot of electricity, but we see a lot of power outages, especially in the winter, with storms, wind events, things like that, which are occurring more and more. And so essentially all of our infrastructure is on diesel or natural gas backup. So it's when we talk about things like RD99, it's something that we're extremely interested in making a switch to reduce emissions. Next there, Mike. And on the snowmaking side, so we sit at right about 3.25 megawatts per total load for like peak operations. Of that is 1.5 to 2 megawatts of that is just compressed air and water pumping for our snowmaking operations. And our ski season runs from November to April, and of that we'll probably make snow for from like October to mid-January, just depending on if Mother Nature cooperates or not. Next slide. So we haven't been able to take advantage of many electric vehicles, a few passenger vehicles and things like that, but there's just not, unfortunately, technology out there. Like if we wanted to go buy an electric 1-ton work truck, that's just there's not a lot of companies doing those types of vehicles, unless they're maybe retrofitted. We are fortunately in the snow sports industry. There's a lot of interest in electrifying other machines, though, and so this past year we purchased 9 electric snowmobiles. Those snowmobiles worked extremely well for us. There were some quality control issues that we are still working through, but it was really exciting to have those machines on the mountain. The difference of when an electric snowmobile goes with a ski patroller on it goes by you versus when a gas machine goes by you, it's amazing how much less disturbance those electric machines have in terms of noise and air quality. We did also purchase a fully electric snowcat. This snowcat it's a smaller machine. It can't keep up with our larger mainline snow crew. We have usually we run 4 to 6 snowcats, 2 shifts a day,
right.
6 to 8 hour shifts.
But then it makes it.
And this machine just cannot keep up with those.
Right. But then it makes me question, where then the RIN
excuse me, folks. One of our online folks is on. Thank you for muting. Okay, sorry about that interruption.
Thanks. We purchased this electric snow groomer. It only has a runtime of 3 hours. It just can't, it cannot do those 6 to 8 hour grooming shifts. So there's a lot of other jobs that it does, but it takes 10 hours to charge on a level 2 charger. We don't have a level 3 yet. We're working to get one. But it's just, that technology is just not caught up to the needs of the ski industry. Now, we do have a hybrid snowcat that has diesel generation that powers electric drive motors and electric pumps for hydraulics and things like that. And that is a mainline groomer. And every time that machine goes out onto the mountain, it's saving us 20% or more on fuel and therefore emissions, just by the nature of its design. And then we have a whole fleet of small engine machines and vehicles, snow blowers, chainsaws, things like that. And we're working to transition those as we can. But those make a huge improvement for air quality in our base area and other areas of the mountain. And we're also working on switching to some electric UTVs and things like that for guest and staff transportation. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick slide of the electric snowcat that we purchased. Prenoth, the company that built this cat, is also prototyping a hydrogen cat. Obviously, hydrogen is not readily available in New Mexico, at least in Taos. So we were far more interested in the electric version. But it's neat to see that the technology, people are out there designing, creating this technology to solve these issues. This cat, when it does go out, it's saving, versus the larger cats behind it there, it's saving between 25 and 50 gallons of diesel per shift. Next slide, please. And the last topic, just to keep this brief, this past winter we were able to procure a 1,000-gallon shipment of RD99 from Dickinson, North Dakota, which is there's a Marathon refinery there, a Marathon Petroleum Refinery, and we wanted to test HVO or renewable diesel just to see if it would work in our operations. We were part of a few other groups that are talking about renewable diesel in the ski industry or in the snow sports industry. It's become a massive theme for meetings for the National Skiers Association and things like that. There's a ton of interest and a ton of buzz around renewable diesel because so many ski resorts are trying to reduce their carbon emissions. So this testing was very successful. What we wanted was to try the fuel, and if there was no difference in operation, that was a success, right? It's a straight drop in fuel. We put it into our grooming machines, into our snow plows and loaders and things, and it worked flawlessly. Now, we did this at the end of the season just because we didn't want to have any gelling issues. This was a warm weather HVO fuel product that we purchased, and we just, we didn't have any downtime operations and money.
And Matthew, if you could wrap up soon, we'd like to have the Q&A period. Thank you.
This is my last slide. So a few foreseen issues that we thought we might encounter when we purchased the fuel. It has a positive 14 degree Fahrenheit cloud point, which obviously would not work for us. We have many nights in the negative 20 or 25 degree range. This fuel is extremely expensive for us to purchase. We paid about $8.50 a gallon. Most of that cost was for the shipping and the labor and the truck leasing to get it to us. But our future plan, Neste developed has a fuel called the My Renewable Diesel product. We hope that we can procure this on a regular basis for less than $1 a gallon premium. It has a negative 12 degree cloud point, and blended, you can go way lower than that. So our plan is to burn that 100% of the time in the summer and probably a blend in the winter. And we do run it with a BG additive that helps with lubricity and other properties of the fuel. So I hope that gives a good, very concise rundown of what we're doing at the Ski Valley and what we hope to do. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Matthew, and thanks to all the presenters. We now have about 16 minutes for Q&A, and what we'd like to ask folks to do is to give initial thoughts, responses, or questions to the panelists. So we'd like to start with that if we could. I think the best way for folks online, since I can't see all of your names at the same time, and I wouldn't see if you all raised your hand at the same time, if you could just type your name in the chat, that'll create sort of a stack of who I should call on first, second, and third. And then also there will be folks in the meeting, if you can raise your hand physically, and I'll try to balance out the two groups. So I'd like to open up for the question and answer period, and I'll recognize Alaric Babe first.
Perfect, thank you. This is maybe more of a clarifying question for Matt. Taos Ski Valley and other customers are purchases of low carbon fuels, not low carbon fuel credits, correct?
Could you restate that?
Sorry, so I just want to make sure. So Taos Ski Valley and other potential customers, you're considered a purchaser of low carbon fuels. You would not be purchasing low carbon fuel credits.
That's correct. Yeah, we're only going to be purchasing low carbon fuels.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood that, yeah, you wouldn't be participating in the market per se, but there is a market for the fuels.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or initial responses to the presentations, commentary? Oh, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Travis Mattson with Sweep. A question for Claudia, if you're still in the room. I was just wondering, has New Mexico done any analysis about how much emissions reductions we need to squeeze out of the transportation sector to reach the state's 2030 climate target?
Yeah. Hey, Travis, this is Michelle. We have done some preliminary analysis that went into the bill, into the statute that was part, of adopted by the legislature. But we would like to use kind of the public participation process and the advisory committee process to understand what pathways we do have to get to that goal. So we haven't made any decisions about how we're going to get there. We just know that it exists.
Thank you.
Thank you. And from the online advisory committee members, I believe Jed requested to speak first.
Yes, thank you. So I have a question for Michelle or Claudia. I actually have a comment. I think this committee is going to do really good on what our goals are and get some rulemaking in place. And just a comment that I have is, we don't want to be deciding winners in this process. We want to be deciding, make sure we focus on the goal of getting renewable fuels into the state and decreasing our carbon. My question is the state considering using the California GREET Model 3 or 4? Is that the calculations that you're using for deciding the the credit values?
We haven't, hey Jed, this is Michelle, we haven't made any decisions, and so if you have any input for what you would prefer New Mexico adopt, that would be super helpful as we make a determination about what would work and what wouldn't work.
Yeah, just so, and we can wrap back around on that. I just, again, to follow back up on what I was saying, where I feel like some of the states, I know there's some groundwork laid with some of the states, but we don't want to get too, we want to look at it in an open mindset to see if we can come up with something better than what some of the other states have done as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next online, we'll have Wish and then Graham Noyes. And as a reminder, if you're online, please type your name into the chat so I can keep track of the order. Go ahead, Wish.
Yes, mine was a few comments based on the presentations I saw, and any return comment will be great. First of all, Michael, that was great. You got us being the fourth state to go after renewable, the LCFS. But I think you failed to point out that we are the first big oil producing state of any of them, and that's very important. The second piece is that production and use states, we have a very low population, so we are not really a big use state, like California, Oregon, or Washington. So our LCFS has to tune or tweak to our needs and our uses, and hence reduce our carbon intensity, which may come from a slightly different angle than what the other three states have. So we can't really, I don't think, copy the others as easily. That's one piece. The other one was for Corianne. I would like to know what the clear comparison of the targets are for California, Oregon, and Washington against ours, because ours is comparing against a 2005 number. Those numbers I saw on your plot started at 2011. Are we trying to go above and beyond those guys at the same number, or what? Those kinds of things. And lastly, for Matt, your point of not being able to use hydrogen is very well taken, because it's very expensive and not very easily available. Unfortunately, fortunately from our point of view, for our state, we can produce a lot of hydrogen if you do it from natural gas. And it can be very cost effective, and we can do that pretty easily, actually. At that point, it's more a question of, do we want to enable that or not? And then Matt can have all the hydrogen he wants and do everything here. So there are a few points of view that has to be looked into, which are different. And those were just some of my comments to think about as we start evaluating how we're going to execute our LCFS.
Awesome.
Because it is different.
Thank you, Christian. Just one and one clarification before Corianne answers. So our reduction targets are against 2018 baseline. The statewide targets are against that 2005 baseline. Just wanted to make that point of clarification. All right, take it away, Corianne. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually all I wanted to say was that there are things that are in that House Bill 41, right, that NED has to figure out, but it is, again, kind of like the way that Michael pointed it out, how you connect the dots and the pathways between those 2 points are up to the discussions for the advisory committee and then for the agency to propose.
Thank you. And I think now we'll move on to Graham Noyes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. First, a real quick question for Matt. Really commend the aggressive goal for Taos there, and I wonder how far along you are in progress, and if there are any other ski areas in the U.S. that have such an aggressive goal.
Yeah, thanks. That's great feedback. There are other ski resorts with similar goals. I want to say Alta, A-Basin, I think Vail, Alterra, and Boyne, the big conglomerate resorts also have similar goals. And, we are struggling because we are reducing our emissions, but at the same time, we're also building hotels and other buildings. And buildings make up a huge, almost 3/4 of our total carbon footprint. So when we build a new building and it's 25% of our footprint, all of those reductions that we've made are erased or they're not seen, right, in what we're doing. So we are making, versus maybe 2015, we've probably reduced our emissions by 20%, but we've also grown by 40% because of building new buildings and infrastructure upgrades.
Great, thanks. Wanted to kind of use that as a lead-in on sort of some policy design issues that we'll be thinking about and sort of understand what we have for information already gathered here. One comment at the outset is, we have a relatively short timeline for this 2030 goal, and so we've got to see that movement happen quite quickly. Following up on Wish's comment, we do have an oil and gas sector where there might be some substantial opportunities. There's also questions around opt-in, exactly where the lines will be in terms of who the obligated parties will be, what fuels will be triggering an obligation and triggering deficits, and which fuels will be outside of that, whether there will be opt-in fuels. Traditionally, Alternative jet fuel has been an opt-in fuel, generating credits but not imposing an obligation. We have questions for places like ski areas where they might be credit generators without being deficit generators, depending on how they use those fuels. So wanted to raise those points and ask the question to Mike. What do we have established already in terms of understanding the different fuel sectors in New Mexico and what the anticipated deficit generation per year is anticipated to be as we start to sort of scope out the way the standard is going to handle credit generation and how those goals ought to those sort of opt-in questions and so forth ought to be structured with being informed by the total requirements that are forecast in the next 5 years here.
Hey Graham, this is Michelle. I want to say that that's part of this conversation, right? So if you have any input on, as we kind of move into the subsequent meetings, what those markers need to be as far as the credit generators, what those markers might need to be from your perspective for the folks in credit deficit. Sorry, I'm calling myself. And so I think those, this is part of this process. We're open to what you think should be, the pathway to get to what the statute directs us to do. And so I think as we move into some of the conversations the next couple of meetings, we're going to be listening very closely on what those proposals are.
And just to clarify, I was asking to what degree we just have sort of statistics out there on fuel usage, on road usage, diesel, gasoline, those types of things, where, so that we've got some raw numbers to work with here.
Yeah, I don't know if we have that data. I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to. I don't know if we have that data that we're bringing to the committee, but if anybody has that data in the committee that you would like to bring to us as we kind of consider those pieces, I think that would be super helpful. I don't know, Mike.
What Michelle said, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I feel like with the folks we have in the room, there are a lot probably of people that know that off the top of my head that are in the transportation space, and I see Travis raising his hand, so maybe he knows.
I think that's a great question, Graham, because I think we're going to need that information to do just the basic modeling to understand what the effects of the rule are going to be, and we'll need that to do the regulatory impact analysis that has to go to the EIB. So I haven't done the work to assemble any of that information, but if there's any part of the state that has data on fuel consumption, and I think it would need to include all the liquid fuels as well as the alternative fuels like electricity or hydrogen or whatever else might be in play. And not just the current conditions, but also a forecast of how those fuel consumption levels are likely to change over time as the vehicle fleet in New Mexico is anticipated to change. And if the state doesn't have that resource, like there are people who would contract to pull that together, but it might take a little while. So
I'm wondering if folks on the advisory board might be able to advise us on those pieces, right? Because that is key. I agree.
Anyway, I probably don't have enough bandwidth myself to be able to pull off that kind of a data collection, but I think that we need it.
Anybody else on the call, maybe on virtual, has some ideas about, I know we do have some fuel producers in the room, if you had any insights onto those numbers.
Sorry, this is Howard. Do you mean
Yes.
So at a very high level, I can say through our transportation electrification program, we do get data from chargers that have been incentivized. However, that is by no means an all-encompassing measurement of all of the fuel that we dispense for EVs. So I'm not able to measure that all directly.
Thank you. We probably just have time for one question left. And I think Gabe was the first person to raise his hand. Gabe, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for these very informative presentations. Question for Corey Ann. Corey Ann, so great slide showing the different fuels that are being used to meet the CFS in the different states. Can you just go a little bit into more detail on what you think is driving those differences? And you suggested that it might be the maturity of the program. Is it the stringency and the of the standard and the effective incentive, financial incentive? Is it supply chains being built up? Kind of what do you see as kind of leading to those differences in the kind of maturation process?
Yeah, hi, Gabe. I think it's all of the above, right? So, I mean, I'll just take, for example, right, ethanol in a state that is incentivizing electric vehicles a lot, especially in the light duty space with rebates and whatnot. I think the transition is going quicker in California than any other state for getting out of gas vehicles and into EVs. So I think that, I think that's why you see a lot of, maybe not as prominent ethanol credit generation, but it could be something like, so that's the thing, is for every single fuel, I think in every state, the market conditions are different, and there could be like dozens of different reasons why that would be. I think the message there is just, to think about New Mexico and to think about the fleet and to think about the complementary policies and the conditions in New Mexico that are actually going to like move something, in one direction or another, more than others.
Thank you, Corianne. And I'm going to move us along now because we have one last section of the meeting in the next 15 minutes. First, I'll just remind you about the next meeting. It will be next Friday, June 28th, right here in this room, in the Springer Building in Albuquerque, same time, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And in just a minute, we're going to do a quick voting process for the advisory committee members to elect a chair. As a reminder, the role of the chair is to sign the open meetings compliance procedure, which will be voted on at the next meeting. There really are no other responsibilities. Also, as I mentioned before, NMED will continue facilitating these meetings, but a chair is needed for that signature. And at the next meeting, there will be consideration and voting on the open meetings compliance procedure. That'll be on the agenda for the next meeting. And then to wrap it up, we're going to ask Michelle Miano to talk a little bit about the idea of soliciting topics for discussion at future meetings. But right now, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Pamela so that if you're ready, and if you're not ready, we can have Michelle talk first. But this is an opportunity, or actually, first I should ask for nominations. So for the role of chair, do we have any nominations for an advisory committee member to play that role?
So I'm going to put someone on the spot because I haven't asked him. If Travis would be willing, I would nominate him, but I don't want to. I've known Travis for a long time. He's worked in transportation for a long time. He's not a fuel producer, but is very aware of policy, but only if he's willing. So,
Travis, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, it sounds like signing a paper is a pretty easy thing to do, and I will be here in person for the next 2 meetings.
Not a heavy lift? Okay.
So I'm willing if the committee is open to that.
We will have a vote, but first I'll ask, are there any other nominations? And if you're online, you can unmute yourself if you have a nomination. If you're in person, you can just speak up. Hearing no nominations, I think, Travis, you are the sole nominee. So now I'll turn it over to you, Pamela.
Okay, that's fine. Would you make that nomination in the form of a motion, and then if we could have an official second, we'll do a I guess we'll do a vote by acclamation, Council Vigil? Okay.
So because Travis is willing, I hereby
Thank you. And is there a second?
This is Amy Brown. I'll second.
Okay. Ms. Lynch, you okay with? Okay. So Ms. Brown, you've seconded? Very good.
Yes.
All those in favor of Member Madsen as chair of this committee by voice, or raise your hand on the platform.
Aye.
And are there any nays? Congratulations, Mr. Madsen.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to signing the paper.
Okay, I think we can pass it along to you, Michelle.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Travis, for signing the paper. I wanted to wrap up, I wanted to wrap up today's meeting. I know we have 10 minutes left to really kind of build on something Travis said earlier, which is kind of what we need, not only perhaps data-wise, right, to have a productive meeting, but also what topics the advisory committee meeting would like to cover. I propose perhaps maybe focusing on credit. What is a credit, kind of the value of the credit, how it's calculated, how it's verified. I know we have some experts on the committee that can probably speak to that. And then also kind of what assurances do the clean fuel generators need that are looking to participate in the market as part of this program. And then another topic being for the credit deficit folks, what are their perspectives, and what are they thinking as far as compliance deadlines and that sort of thing, given our carbon intensity goals. But I wanted to open it up for different topics that the advisory committee would benefit from. That is what New Mexico Environment Department, I think would help us understand how to make the market work to meet our goals, but also market mechanics and suggestions about what is needed to have a productive discussion for those topics or different topics as the advisory committee might deem it needs to kind of help inform the New Mexico Environment Department as to what would make a good New Mexico program and a helpful New Mexico program. So I just wanted to kind of open up the floor, and Pam, if you could help us with folks online too, if somebody has a hand raised. So Travis, maybe I'd turn over to you as far as what you would need, to kind of build on what you were saying before that you would need from the committee, and maybe if anybody, does anybody in the committee have any comments as far as Travis's ask?
I did have one thought, and
okay.
Maybe there's some folks inside the state agency somewhere who worked on an emissions inventory.
Yes, we have that.
So there's probably fuel data inside there that those folks might be able to pull out and give to us. I don't know how current it is, but
yeah,
just a initial thought on where we might be able to look for some of the inputs. We might need to understand just kind of the scope of what we're doing.
Okay. I was also thinking too maybe GSD or maybe tax and rev as far as maybe some fuel data that we can gather for discussion. Anybody else have initial thoughts on topics? Pam?
Dan Klein and Jen Smith are on.
Oh. Okay, Dan, on the platform. Dan? Uh-oh.
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute.
Oh, okay.
Just one thought. Mention was made earlier of the GREEP program being updated. If non-CO2 emissions are to be counted in the GREEP program, particularly methane emissions, I think it's important to understand whether those will be calculated using standard default values or whether exceptions can be made for specific programs. Because there are technologies out there to reduce the methane leakage rates. Mm-hmm. And if standard default options are used in GREEP, there's no incentive to do that. So if there's a mechanism by which specific actions to reduce methane emissions in gas production can be done, I think it will make for a stronger, more robust program.
Okay. Thank you. And I think that that might fall into a broader category of the GREET model generally. Jed, I think this was to your point earlier as far as what we could consider as far as the version of the GREET model, or I know that the bill does not direct us to use any particular kind of model, and so I don't know if folks had thoughts on other calculations for that carbon intensity piece, but Jed, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. So I was just going to suggest the tax and revenue department to get numbers, or the ag department.
Okay.
Might have fuel usage numbers for the state.
Thank you. Super helpful. Travis?
So in terms of topics I'd like to talk about with the committee, there's 3 of them. One is, where does this fit into the state's overall climate targets, and how can we align the program with where we're headed in the big picture? 2, how can we maximize the co-benefits? So I'd like to talk a little bit about equity and cost savings and co-pollutant reductions and whatever else people are interested in maximizing. And then 3rd, how do we minimize any potential externalities like regressive cost impacts or unwanted land use changes or that sort of thing? And what sorts of guardrails does the policy need to include so that we're striking the right balance between all the factors at play?
Great, thank you. Any other folks have topics?
Yeah, we have
Oh.
Joseph Serena who'd like to speak.
Joe.
Yes, I think we have a great resource in Corey Ann, and I appreciate her for her presentation there. I think it would be extremely valuable for the advisory committee to understand where NMEED is currently in the rulemaking process, and to get their initial thoughts so that we don't, so that the advisory committee can react against those and maybe focus the topics on those areas where NMED is specifically looking for input. I think the model, maybe easy one, and there may be a whole other category of items that have already had initial thoughts, and that maybe represents the 90%. But if there is any insights that can be provided to the advisory committee of that remaining 10%, I think that would help focus both the discussion and input.
Yeah, I think that is well put. I think our 3 topics for the Environment Department, we don't have draft rules, so we're not going to have the opportunity to kind of go through line by line and determine, if this works for folks, if that works for folks, and have that kind of deep level discussion. But I think that really the purpose of the committee is to get your thoughts on our 3 topics, which I keep kind of harping on, which is kind of the credit, how for those that are in the credit world, when it comes to verifying and what that looks like, how do we determine that we'll actually have the carbon reductions that we need to meet our goal? I think that's very interesting to us in the Environment Department. I think for us in the Environment Department, we're also very cognizant of the timeline that we need to abide by, that was up in Mike's slide as far as the carbon reductions. And so I think we need to talk about, we're interested at the Environment Department just talking about what kinds, for the credit generators, what kinds of pieces of the market do you like and need for us to incorporate into the rules to meet those goals. And also for the credit deficit for people that will be in credit deficit, what are you thinking about, and what does that timeline look like for you? Because it's connected, right? Like the deficit folks are going to have to purchase credits in the market. How many credits do you need? I think would be, are you anticipating do we need to have a situation where we have all of the credit generators generate credits first, and then we have all the credits ready for folks to purchase them, right? So I think those are the things that we're thinking about with, of course, the end goal being those statutory carbon reductions. So for those three topics, if there's anything that you can provide insight for us, that would be helpful for us.
Michelle, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to say we have less than 1 minute left, and I think it's important for me to close on time. Is that correct?
Okay.
Do we need to close at 12, or
can we extend the meeting? For purposes of open meeting, can we continue?
Yeah.
For purposes of open meeting, can we continue? Oh, okay. I think it's okay if we continue. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Eduardo, excuse me.
Yeah, very quick. I think one topic that it will be interesting to discuss too is the carbon intensity schedule. Are we envisioning a straight line?
Yes.
Are we envisioning something that is more gradual at the beginning, more harsh at the end? I think we need to understand some of the data that were mentioned before to make some recommendations to that. But it will be, I think, a very important aspect that will cover both credits and deficits.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up, because that's a question that, as far as insight for the department, we have the exact same thought. Do we need an annual reduction over time? Or do we, if it's true that we don't, we do not want to set up a rule structure where we're suddenly in 2029 and nobody has the infrastructure in place, we can't meet our targets, and then we fail, right? So I think that it would help exactly to have that discussion. And we need the fuel data, right, you're saying, as part of the launching pad to have that discussion. Great. Yes.
So Michelle,
Brian.
just kind of continuing on that same discussion, I think we also need to have an understanding of what the baseline carbon intensity number is for gasoline and for diesel as of 2018. The balance will have to come later, to Travis's point, but understanding what the target numbers or what the baseline number is from the carbon intensity will help you to look at the various fuels that can be used to then offset that. Your early phases are certainly going to be liquid options. You'll be looking at ethanol, you'll be looking at biodiesel, you'll be looking at renewable diesel. It'll make a big difference in terms of what the program can do and how successful it can be and what those carbon reductions can be over the time between now and 2030. It's a pretty steep target to get to 20% in as short a timeline as you've got. So setting those baselines are going to be critical. The other things that I think are when we think about the balances of what you're trying to achieve, to Travis's point in terms of the long term, the 2005 targets, understanding what you're expecting to come from transportation is a key, and without a lot of the underlying data and knowing where NMDE is on that makes it difficult. And then I've got one other comment, and that is around understanding where the state and how the state interprets in the statutory language, particularly as it talks to the guardrails that Travis mentioned earlier, because those are key to how the program itself can be successful, and if not properly implemented or understood, can actually undermine the program in the long term.
That's super helpful. I think that for the 2018 carbon intensity pieces, I think that's something we have been talking about. We haven't settled on what that is, right? So we need input from you as far as, which I think is a great topic, like how should we be looking at those levels? Because we know that there are different ways of calculating that. And then, so I think Claudia is taking notes, and of course it's being recorded, so we'll capture all of this. I also think that, to your point, if you have ideas, we haven't interpreted the statute, so if there are pieces that, concern you, and I'm just going to say indirect land use, right? Just going to throw out that hand grenade. I mean, that's a huge one. And I think there's differing opinions in the room about what that would be, and and on the platform. And so I think that kind of, if we have that carbon intensity conversation, I think it would be helpful for us to understand, hey, we've done indirect land use in California, Washington, and Oregon. Here's some of those pitfalls that we're seeing. New Mexico Environment Department, we know you have to make a decision on it. Here's 3 points we want you to take away as you're kind of thinking about how to do that kind of calculation.
Yeah, and I think that too leads itself into the discussion around which model and how you actually
It goes
handle the
back-
GREET model. I mean,
Perfect.
these things are all completely intertwined in how you make decisions, and making a decision in one area drives how you can respond and what the program can look like into the future. So I think getting some early look at where you guys are on GREET and what your interpretations of a GREET model, whether that be, you know, the California version, the Oregon version, the Washington version, or frankly looking to the base GREET model, which provides more open and flexibility in terms of how fuels can comply, what they look like across the spectrum, and how that CI is interpreted. So just
Thank you. That's super helpful. Thanks. Dow.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Another topic would be the scope of the program in terms of transportation fuels versus other things. And by point of reference, we saw the bar graph early on that showed emissions reductions in terms of, say, the transportation sector versus the industrial sector. How do you distinguish between the two, and what's in and what's out? And then another topic that's pretty complicated, and I would say economic impacts, but particularly opportunities for New Mexico job growth, as well as any impacts on, if they exist, negative impacts on jobs in New Mexico.
Okay, thank you. Gabe, you have the floor. Gabe?
Oh, sorry about that. I thought I had unmuted myself. Thanks. Since we're kind of at the end of time, I was just asking whether it'd be possible for us to get you any ideas on topics by, say, end of the day on Monday over email if we had additional thoughts.
Chris, is that okay? Oh, Gabe, sorry, could you repeat your question?
Could we send suggestions for topics by email?
Oh, I have just received clarification. Sorry. We have to get the agenda out for purposes of the Open Meetings Act. So with that timing, Gabe, I think the latest that we can receive suggestions is 72 hours before. No, that's when we have to post the agenda.
We shouldn't be changing the agenda after the 72-hour mark is there. And just wanted to say something about emailing. I think that, you know, to the extent that members are communicating with each other, I think it should be in the spirit of a subcommittee. There is a little bit of a concern that there would be what would be referred to as a rolling quorum. You know, in other words, if one person contacts another person and then, you know, there is a kind of de facto meeting that is held outside of that. So I think it's fine that committee members contact each other, but please limit that and keep it in the spirit of a subcommittee, just by analogy, and do avoid creating a kind of, you know, rolling conversation, whether it's through, you know, the game of telephone or whatever. We don't want to do that, so just avoid that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for that point. And then for Gabe, I think maybe early Monday morning, if you could get us your input on topics. 10 a.m. Eastern or Mountain Time. Okay. Anybody else on the platform have thoughts on topics? Or in the room? Kara? No.
I do have a thought. I'm sorry. Thank you. I do have a thought, particularly, you know, as we're developing these rules, I think that we could all benefit from entities that may participate in markets in the states that have existing clean fuels standards, to share what in those standards are standardized so that their participation is streamlined and perhaps made easier. That's my comment.
Thank you, thank you. And we in New Mexico are very much in talks with California, Oregon, Washington. We have been informally invited to join the Pacific Coast Collaborative. And so I think we'll get a lot of information from state to state versus that process too. And so thank you for that comment. That's an important one. Yes, Carl.
One of the topics that was mentioned earlier is getting the lead out of aviation fuel, and it's a little out of line from the ordinary things that we've been talking about, but I think we're the group that needs to act on this, and so I would suggest that's a topic to put on the agenda at some time soon.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, sorry, Chris, please.
Was the agenda for today approved?
No, I think we're going to move into.
Okay, thank you.
Today's agenda was.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move into. I'm going to hand it back over to Melissa for final thoughts on open meetings pieces, and I want to clarify that for purposes of this is something. Dal, that you had mentioned earlier as far as the report that's coming out of this group, New Mexico Environment Department will collect everything, and then the advisory group will review it and approve it to make sure that everything we've captured for you is what you understand it to be, if that makes sense. So we'll do all the hard work of putting all the information together from these conversations, but of course we want to make sure that that accurately reflects our conversations here. So I just want to make that clarification. Dal.
Yeah, just another clarifying piece of that. It sounds like the report's mostly a compilation. Will it also include public comments and those kinds of things submitted to the advisory committee during this process?
The public comments will occur after the process closes. And so once we put all of the information together, then the public will review the information as compiled by us and as you approve, as what occurred, and then the public can comment on issues that we have discussed here. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to hand it back over to Melissa for final.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if you're expecting me to say more about open meetings compliance procedures. All I know really is that they will be considered and voted on at the next meeting, correct? So I don't think I need to say more about them today. Does that sound okay? Okay. Great. No problem. So with this, I believe we're ready to adjourn the meeting. And I want to thank everyone who participated in person and online. Move to adjourn. Okay. And I think it would be an advisory committee member who would need to make a motion. Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Looks like the ayes have it.
Aye.
Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next week, I hope.